Hello and welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Today's interview is with Mariano of Maker Growth, MakerDAO. MakerDAO is one of the oldest and arguably most important protocols built on Ethereum. It is a pawn shop where you are able to take your digital asset collateral and generate DAI, a stablecoin. So you don't have to sell your crypto. Instead, you can take out a loan using that as collateral in a completely decentralized, trustless manner. Oh yeah, it's only a few percentage per year in interest too. Very, very low. Mariano is from Buenos Aires and has a pretty unique view on how DeFi is growing and where it needs to go to get to the next level. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to take a second to thank you for all of the great questions and feedback I've been getting. You guys really rock. If you're getting some value from this, please drop me a line, send me a message, or leave a review or give it a thumbs up on YouTube. These things really help. All right, enjoy this episode with Mariano on MakerDAO and all things DeFi. Mariano, excited to have you on. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, and your audio sounds great too, by the way. I didn't say that, but always appreciate a good audio. So
yeah, I'm an audio, let's say audiophile kinda. I have my equipment, my microphone, my sound interface. I have pretty much everything.
Well, you can tell. So it sounds great. So it's always kind of intimidating when the guest has a better audio sounding than I do. So we'll have to put this one up to vote for the fans or something.
Great.
But yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on. And MakerDAO is one of those products that when I tell people, hey, you should see what's happening in DeFi, I just say, go to MakerDAO, take out, like, put your ETH in a vault, take out a loan. It's a few clicks with a smart contract and it's literally magic. And it's been around forever. DAI is such an integral part of the system, and we'll get into all of that. But for my audience who perhaps don't know who you are or what Maker is, can you briefly introduce yourself and then go a little bit into Maker and what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mariano. I've been working almost 3 years at the Maker Foundation, doing as a, let's say, head of marketing for Latin America. And we've been doing a very, I would say, like, not only like a good job, but it's also like a pretty hard job, right? To bring DAI into all of these countries that they really, really need a stable currency, right? And what Maker does is pretty simple, right? And I think that is where the magic lies. It's pretty much, it acts as a, let's say, as a pawn shop, right? Let's explain a bit what is a pawn shop, and then we can make the analogy, right? A pawn shop, you go to the pawn shop and you say you have a watch, right? And you say, okay, sir, I have this watch and I would like to pawn it. So the owner of the store grab that watch and says, okay, for me this watch is worth, I don't know, $100, right? And if you agree with that, this person will give you $100, and then you walk away with the $100 to spend it on anything that you may need, may want, whatever, right? And then when you give back to the owner of the store this $100 plus an interest, right? And you will get back your watch, right? So that exact same operation or exact same concept is what Maker does, right? But in a decentralized fashion, right? So instead of giving a watch, you are giving crypto collateral. Let's say, for example, Ethereum, right? So according to the total amount of Ethereum that you are giving to the smart contracts, that you are depositing into the smart contracts, you are able to take a loan out of it, right? So you can use your DAI in whatever you need, wherever you want. And then when you give back your DAI plus the stability fee, you are able to recover your crypto collateral. That is, like, I find this like it's the easiest way to explain what Maker does. And I think that this is like a really powerful thing, right? Because one of the things that I get a lot in past years says, why do I need Maker, right? What is like the whole purpose of this? And for me, the answer is pretty simple, right? It's saying you are able to use the value of your assets without needing to sell those assets, right? And this is, for me, this is like it's a pretty important concept, mostly because from where I come from Argentina, and country that averaged in the last 100 years, we averaged an 80% inflation. So we born with this thing, right? And we are crafted by this thing. And one of the most common operations here in Argentina is this is almost like a cultural thing, is when you get your salary at the beginning of the month, what you will be doing is you will purchase dollars, right? And to cover, right, the value of the things that you are working, to cover the time, let's say, that you're going to not being diluted, right? So as soon as you are getting some expenses and the month is running and passing by, you are selling those dollars, right, in order to pay for those expenses. So if you think that, it's like pretty much like a auto credit, right, like a self credit concept, right? Well, Maker is that. I mean, you don't have to sell your assets. You don't have to sell your Ethereum. If you're in love with Ethereum, let's say that you think that it's going to go up in price. You don't want to be exposed to the volatility of the market. Don't sell it. Give it and deposit it into the smart contract, and you're able to get DAI and use the value of that Ethereum for whatever you want.
I love the pawn shop analogy. So for me, in the US, I always use a home equity line of credit. You can access that value without selling your house and pull out a loan collateralized by that asset. But I mean, a pawn shop's way better, because presumably the types of assets that you can support and add as collateral will continue to expand. But I think that's really powerful for a place like Argentina. I mean, I always kind of presumed that that's what happened. You get the local currencies, the peso, right?
That's
Argentine
correct,
pesos. So you get the pesos and then convert them instantly to dollars, something more stable. And perhaps like the rhetoric is that you're converting to crypto or something. But if you convert it to crypto, then you can take a loan in dollars, which is much more stable, although arguable at this point how much inflation there actually is with the dollar. But that's a whole nother conversation. Less than the peso, that's for sure.
For sure.
and not sell your crypto. Fascinating. So can you talk briefly about, because Maker is one of the oldest dApps on Ethereum. Can you talk a little bit about the history, where you are now, and where you guys are going in terms of collateral supported and whatever else is relevant?
Yes, I mean, right now the Maker protocol is facing, let's say, like a transition, right, in which it's publicly known that the Maker Foundation is going to dissolve, right? Probably at the end of the year. I don't know the exact date, but this is such a huge milestone, right, in the decentralization of the protocol. We've been seeing, I think it was 2 months ago, that the Maker Foundation get back to the protocol all the makers that they have in their wallets, right? I think it was 84,000 MKR that the foundation give back to the protocol, to the DAO, basically. And yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about this is that right now there are a lot of, let's say, tasks that the foundation was doing, right, that it needs to be taken care by the community, right? And that is why we are seeing right now what is called core unit proposals, right, in which people from the community can propose to form a core unit. What is a core unit? A core unit, it's, let's say, a group of people, right, that has a mandate, that has a mission with the protocol, right? So for example, I work for the growth core unit. Our mandate is to, grow the Maker protocol, right? What we are doing is kind of like business development plus business to business marketing, right? To start bringing more collaterals, more partnerships, more implementations, and to start seeing grow the protocol, right? So we have, for example, right now also the smart contract core unit that obviously they will do all the development of the smart contract for the protocol. Then we have also the Oracle core unit and so on, right? Well, one and another one that's pretty interesting also is the real world finance core unit. And yeah, I mean, the idea behind this is that if you have an idea, if you want to contribute to the protocol, if you want to contribute to the DAO, just make a proposal, talk to the community, and you will hopefully you will get to the on-chain vote. And if that vote is positive and the token holders, the maker token holders thinks that this core unit may bring value to the DAO, they will vote you, right? And then you will start working right away. I think that is something really, really cool because, as you said, MakerDAO is one of the oldest project in Ethereum. It's pretty funny because there's still a lot of conversations around in Reddit. I think there are around 2015, I think, where Rune Christensen, that was the founder of MakerDAO, one of the founders of MakerDAO, was writing a post where he laid some ideas about an e-dollar or something like that. And Vitalik at that moment, he was also in Reddit, adding some value to the conversation, asking some questions, giving some feedback. And it was really cool how that turned into what it was at that time, Maker Coin. That I think if you look for Maker Coin on Google, you will end up on a Bitcoin Talk post that way ago, long time ago. Every time that a new coin was on any blockchain, it has their own Bitcoin Talk post, right? And yes, I mean, MakerCoin was there. It is there still, and you can see all the initial features that the coins had. And at that time, because for those who are listening, Maker did not an ICO. At that time, what the founders were doing was they were selling MKR through the forum. As soon as they were needing to hire some developers, to hire community, to hire like anyone, right? So in that way is how the protocol start to get built, right? I mean, it was very, very little by little with pretty much only participation from the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. From community roots to community future, which I really love. And like on the website, it says, as always planned, the Maker Foundation recently reached the milestone to begin dissolving in an effort to achieve a new degree of decentralization. So I love it. I mean, it literally started grassroots, built up into a foundation to really like accelerate the mission and move a lot more quickly, because a mob of community is very tough to manage, which is why it sounds like you're doing these like core units, which are, basically a guild with a specific mandate, which makes a lot of sense. So MakerDAO is built on this concept of over collateralization. From my standpoint, at least. So I give $1,000 worth of ETH and I take $100 of loan, and it's totally fine because ETH can go down to $150 before I'm at risk of losing this. And with that, it issues this $100 of DAI, which is a stable coin. So that is the way that this thing works. Originally, it was only ETH as collateral, and now you've added a number of different types of collateral. What's on the roadmap for adding? Because you mentioned something about traditional finance potentially as collateral for that. What can you share here? Presumably that somebody could find on the forums and figure out what's going on, obviously, but we have the inside guy. So share with us what you can about other types of collateral and a vision roadmap going forward.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because right now we are discussing in the community like the whole role of the collaterals, right? Because there are some collaterals that are approved on the system, but they are not being used much, really. And having a collateral in the system, it's kind of expensive, right? Because you need to have a set of oracles and, let's say, an infrastructure and transactions and keepers and like a lot of things in order to have a collateral running on the system. So what we are discussing right now is saying, okay, where are those collaterals that, first of all, they are being used, right? What are the collaterals that they are not yet approved but may seem a very good options to vote in, right? And what form of let's say type of collaterals that are not correlated to the crypto world can be implemented into the system, right? So yeah, we have a list of the collaterals that are not being used right now in the system but are implemented, and we are actively contacting the teams behind those coins, what they want to do, right? Because I mean, if they have the possibility to mint DAI, they should be using, right? It's a pretty good form of credit, right? And if there's something that is not useful or some of the conditions are not well enough for them to mint DAI, let's talk to the community. What are your conditions that you need, right, to mint DAI? So that is one of the things that we are doing at Maker Growth. We are actively trying to push the protocol and to contact different entities or collateral teams that have these collaterals approved. And yeah, I mean, there's right now, it's what I love about this is that we are seeing a lot of discussion in the forums, and that brings so many different points of view, right? Because you have, at one side, people that say, no, we will need to have like all the collateral as possible in the system because it will be the best form of risk diversification that we could have, right? Then you will have other a group of token holders that they say, no, we only should onboard collaterals that are being widely used, just the ones that are being widely used. Other ones is not so much because we incur in cost, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things that we were discussing recently, and is for me one of the most interesting things, is, for example, the possibility of institutional vaults, right? I think that with this bull run, we are seeing a lot of institutions coming in, right? And they are really, they have a credit appetite that is way bigger than we can think, right? And for them, MakerDAO could be a very, very good option to financing themselves with their assets, right? So we start also this conversation in the community where we are approaching different really big players and institutions to see how they can use the Maker protocol, right? But I mean, yes, it's all like a long-term game, right? In which we will have to see what are the certain regulations that play with different institutions that are from different countries, and then we have to bring that into the community to discuss. And then if there's some form of modification that we'll need to do, it needs to pass through the voters, right? Through the voting phase. So yeah, I mean, right now it's one of the nicest things is to see community participation related to that. And I think that also relates to that. The cool thing is that we surpassed the 5 billion DAI circulation, and that it means that the collateral choice that we are having in the last couple of years is the right one, right? And obviously, I think that those who are listening, they will say, hey, well, you know that USDC is a pretty big part of the DAI collateral right now, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but 3 months ago, 75% of the whole collateral in DAI was pretty much Ethereum, and no one was complaining about, right? So what I think is worth to explain here is that one of the best things of Maker, I would say, is that it has this ability to be like let's say like a pendulum, right? In which it can convert, or it can move according to the market needs, right? If the market needs says that you need to have more centralized collateral, as could be USDC, the Maker system can totally do that, right? As we are seeing right now. But if the market dynamics tells you that you need to have decentralized collateral, as we saw in the previous months, Maker can totally do it in a blink of an eye, as we were seeing like in the past drop of the price, right? And I think that is one of the most important things, is the ability to move from centralized to decentralized, from centralized to decentralized, according to the market dynamics, right? And the cool thing about it is that Maker is earning money, right, for that operation. It's not like other protocols that they are paying you in some form of token or an incentive to use DAI. This is the other way around. The Maker protocol is getting paid for minting DAI. And this is like, if you think for a moment, this is how like auto-sustainable thing works, right? And then if you start to pile up all the features, it's like a really cool thing. You have a dynamic system that can behave exactly as the market needs, and it's earning money, all through collaterals, right? So I think that many people sometimes say that, Maker is kind of an old system, is not so new, related to incentives, and I totally accept all those, all that feedback, but I will really tell them that, just take a look to the other protocols, take a deep dive in what Maker is doing, and you will see the difference in advantages, right?
Oh, yeah. So 5 billion DAI in circulation. Congrats, by the way. I mean, that is just a tremendous milestone. And I mean, for the longest time, wasn't there a cap of like 100 million or something?
That's correct.
Was that it?
That's correct.
I mean, for the longest time. And then, and that's back when the DSR was like 15% or something, right? Like these were different days, that's for sure. And, but so you brought up great points about, and for the listeners, DAI is this censorship resistant stable coin that's it's backed by this plethora of collateral. So it's not like USDC, which is censorable. But USDC is a collateral type, one of the many types used to generate DAI. So it gets a little hazy. But $5 billion of DAI is a lot at this point. I'm curious, is there a limit at this point to how much DAI can actually be generated by the Maker protocol?
Yeah, each collateral has something called depth ceiling, right? It's in which how much DAI can be minted by each type of collateral, right? So right now, Ethereum and USDC are the ones with the biggest, let's say, depth ceiling. But at the end of the day, the depth ceiling and the stability fees are pretty much the levers that you have to control the risk of those collaterals, right? Then what that means is if you have a high stability fee and a low depth ceiling, it means that collateral is like really risky, right? Because maybe it's not that liquid, maybe it has, I don't know, certain things that the risk profile team, that is a core unit. We have a core unit for risk.
A very important one, I might add. All of them are very important, but that one
that one is especially important. That's correct. And they set up all the parameters, right, for each collateral. And in that way you can control like the whole system as if it was like different portfolios with different risk in it.
So, but with all of these types of collateral, if the debt ceiling was reached with all of them at this point, like how many DAI would be in circulation? Like double, 10 billion?
I'm not so sure about it because, for example, right now we have a module called the PSM, it's Price Stability Module. That is something that was a nice tool that the Maker community implemented in order to bring the DAI to a hard one, let's say $1, because in the past, before the price stability module, DAI was always like hovering between 1.01, 1.02, 3, right? And the community came up with a very cool idea. Then they say, okay, the thing is that DAI is over $1, right? When there's a lot of DAI demand, right? So why don't we create some form of arbitrage mechanic with a smart contract that if people are seeing that DAI is worth, let's say 1.1, right? You can send, for example, USDC to this smart contract, and this smart contract will mint DAI. So you are having right now a token that it was more than the token that you previously deposited, that it was the USDC, right? So in that way is why, for example, USDC also grew a lot in our system as a collateral, because you send the USDC to the PSM, and if the DAI is 1.01, and you send the USDC, you get the DAI, and then you sell the DAI, and you are making 1 cent per each dollar, right? And the other way around, it also works, right? I mean, it's, for example, DAI is 0.99. You can purchase DAI on the market and send it to the PSM and get 1 USDC that you know it's redeemable for $1, right? So this is like let's say an arbitrage smart contract that it really works to keep the peg really, really stable, and also helps to grow the protocol, right? Because all the USDC that is in the PSM, it's right now in the hands of the DAO, let's say, and we are right now, in fact, we are discussing what to do with this USDC, right? Do we have to invest it? Do we have to leave it there? It's like a pretty interesting discussion too.
Fascinating. So I'm curious, with something like MakerDAO, $5 billion DAI in circulation, now that the foundation has been dissolved, you can add tons of different collateral and increase each with its own debt ceiling. So the ability for this thing to mint DAI, a stable coin backed by this plethora of assets. I mean, at what point does MakerDAO and DAI start to pose a threat to the actual US dollar and the US financial system? And so is the goal here that you're a completely decentralized organization at this point, so there's like nobody to kind of point the finger to, and it's just integrated into so many things that we're doing that it is what it is?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer, but if I were someone that it's, let's say that I come to the earth right now, I'm an alien, right? And I have to analyze all the things that are happening in the world, and I see this case, I wouldn't say that it's a threat to the US financial system, but it's totally the other way. I think that we are helping the dollar to be taken as a unit of account all around the world, right? I've been seeing many essays related to dollarizations in different parts of the world: Argentina, Ecuador, Venezuela, other countries, and I've been seeing also, I mean, a huge, I don't know if it's follower, but I've been really interested in the dollar milkshake theory. I don't know if you are aware of that. It's really interesting what they say, right? And I think that we will face dollarization in the whole world, right? Not so much for the dollar as a paper cash dollarization, but in terms of a unit of account, right? Probably, I mean, right now, money is a form of language, right? I mean, if I have to talk with a Japanese guy that he doesn't speak Spanish or English, we can't communicate, right? But let's say that I say $100,000, he knows pretty well what he can do with that money. And I know what I can do with that money. So we have a form of understanding with that thing. So I do believe that regardless of DAI, right? I mean, let's say any stable coin that is pegged to the dollar is helping right now to this world dollarization, right? Mostly because this technology is a borderless technology. It doesn't care if it's in Australia, in the United States, in Spain, or in Argentina, right? And I've been, for example, working and be close to a lot of people in these past 3 years that they do, for example, a lot of international remittances, right? And if you think about it for a minute, international remittances, it's like an industry, it's like a vertical, because you have a lot of intermediaries in the middle, a lot of them. But in the most simple form, it's just me sending money to you, and this technology enables that, right? So if you think for a moment, the powerful thing of that simple operation, right? I do believe that DAI, USDC, or whatever other stable coin is not posing a threat to the financial US system. It's the other way around. For me, it's like really helping them, because the demand for the dollar around the world, it's still quite big. Although it was printed a lot in these months, it's still big, right? It's still big. And I think that in that way, it helps them a bit with that.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting take for sure. I'm curious. So you've had tremendous growth over these last, call it a year. Presumably, a lot of this has been driven by the DeFi summer last year, and this like it suddenly clicked to people that you don't have to sell your ETH or whatever type of collateral. You can take a low interest loan and then do something with that money. So whether it be spend or invest in something else. I think for my audience, and for me, let's take a step back now that we understand Maker, where you're going, what you're focused on, and how important it is. Let's talk about the DeFi landscape overall. Like, this is being recorded in July of 2021. So what does the DeFi landscape look like right now?
Well, DeFi for me, it's not that it's one of the most exciting things ever for me. But yeah, I mean, we are seeing right now a huge growth of USDC as a stable coin for the DeFi world. I still remember when we have this DAI-centric era of DeFi, when we really started. Let's say it was the beginning of 2018, when you were able to take a loan of DAI. At that moment, it was called CDP instead of Vault, because
I remember CDPs. Collateralized debt positions. Vaults is way easier.
That's correct. The CDP.
I could never remember which one's which. So I told somebody the other day to take out a CDP, and they were like, they're like, I'm on Oasis. I don't see CDP. I'm like, oh crap, all this has changed.
I'm old. Yeah, it was called CDP at that time. But yeah, I mean, it grew from DAI to USDC and all these forms of different stable coins that we have now, from the ones that are algorithmic, that are really dangerous, in my opinion, from the ones that are total experiments. I saw the other day one, it's like under collateralized stablecoin, I think.
Yeah, it was the Frax fork. I just had Sam come to Crypto Mondays. It was the Titan thing. Well, it didn't go to zero, but it went to 0.0000001.
Yeah.
That chart is brutal.
It's brutal, but I do think that any form of experiments in the DeFi world has value, right? Because at least we are saying, okay, that is not the way that we should take, right? If it fails. So yeah, I mean, what I see in the DeFi world right now, although hacks and exploits and those things are often horrible, it makes the system a bit more anti-fragile, right? And I think that is interesting because the way and the fast pace of development that we have in this industry, I haven't seen anything like that before in my life, right? The other day I was talking with a friend and he was telling me about like the traditional markets and that kind of things, right? And I say, don't you get bored of the traditional market? This is no, why? And we've been discussing, I mean, for example, if you think for a moment, right, traditional market operates from Monday to Friday at most, right? Let's say 8 to 10 or maybe 12 hours a day at most. And you have DeFi that operates 24/7, 365, right? So let's start thinking from first principles here. Okay, so if you take the traditional market and you see it as a, let's say, as a software development, each week, let's say that each week is an iteration and an improvement, right? So we have 1 week from Monday to Friday. Then you have to wait 48 hours. Then we have another iteration from Monday to Friday, and so on, and so on, and so on. But if you take DeFi, it's something that never stops, never stops, never stops, never stops. And each week, I think that I think it was something like each week DeFi, it's having 140 more hours of operations and iterations and improvement that the traditional market is, right? So again, if you think it from the first principle, you say, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, DeFi at some point will catch up traditional markets. So the way I think is that, let's say like traditional markets are like silos of different information and liquidity, and DeFi punch a hole in each one of these silos. And very little by little, all the liquidity are starting to go to this pool of DeFi, right? So yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I don't know in which time, or I don't know if DeFi will be bigger than traditional markets. I don't know. But certainly we are facing right now a very interesting time, right? In which we will have to see how institutions will adapt to this, how regulators will adapt to this, because according to let's say the last year that I've been talking with institutions and regulators, they really want to be in this industry, in DeFi, right? But you know, they move much more slower than the retail can move, right? But yeah, I mean, very, very interesting times lies ahead.
Oh, indeed. And I think this experimentation and this boom bust cycle and all of these things are very, very important. And you kind of like shake it out, and like the good ones fall to the bottom, and we pick up those and we do the same thing and shake it out. And you end up so far away from like where you started. But I think there's this mentality. Yeah, the 24/7, 365 like is terrible for all of our sleep scores. That's for sure. but I think this like underdog mentality, this shared prosperity, if we succeed, and the shared misery when, you know, ETH price goes to zero, all of these things like also add so much fodder to this fire as well. So you talked a bit about you mentioned under collateralized stable coins, which could be the holy grail, but something I also forgot to mention or ask you about were CBDCs and how those fit into this whole picture as a potential risk to DAI crypto. Do they work together? Is this? I'd be curious your thoughts on CBDCs.
Well, yeah, I mean, CBDCs, I think that they could be they could have a deeper political impact than an economic one, because I mean, this is a difficult thing because we don't know how are they going to be, right? Or what are rails of the central bank digital currency. I mean, are they going to be managed only by banks? Are people going to be able to hold and transact central bank digital currencies? We still don't have like all the specifications related to that, because if you think for a moment, if retail, so if the average person is able to hold and transact central bank's digital currency, commercial banks don't have much thing to do as operations or whatever, because in that sense, people can have an account directly with the central bank, right? So we still have to, we need to see all the specifications around central bank digital currency. But I do think, as I said, that it's more like a political weapon rather than economical one. I've been seeing, for example, in Argentina, a lot of different agreements between different central banks from other countries with Argentina, saying, hey, you know, we are giving this amount of money in which you can only spend with us, and you need to give us this X amount of natural resources, right? So let's think for a moment the same thing, but instead of money, with a central bank digital currency. It's much easier. It's much easier to do that, right? So I think that, yeah, for me, the impact is much more political than economical one. But once we see like the whole specification of the central bank's digital currency, we should start to get a sense of the economical impact of it.
Yeah. Well, it's coming. I mean, at some point. So yeah, we'll see. It definitely is going to shake things up. That's for sure. So we talked a bit about DeFi, like where it is, what's happening, why it's so interesting. But you talked a bit about talking to a number of institutions. They really want to get involved, but they haven't, or they're dipping their toes in, perhaps. What needs to happen to get more people, you know, I hate to say mainstream adoption, but easier access to DeFi and what's going on right now?
For institutions? Yeah, the institutions have this thing, most of all related to KYC. That is like their first concern, and anti-money laundering, right? And I totally agree with them. That sometimes it's pretty difficult to KYC a smart contract, right? So let's say, for example, that we have an institution that wants to take a DAI loan with their assets, right? They need to sign a deal saying who is going to give them the DAI, but it's no one, because it's a smart contract, right? So that is one of the difficult things. The second one is the times that they are accustomed to have for their operations, right? In DeFi, it's pretty much everything in real time, right? So for example, we've been talking with an institution and we were explaining how a vault in MakerDAO works, and saying that you have, for example, if your position enters in liquidation phase, you have 1 hour to recollateralize your vault, right? And that is a feature that works really well in our system, right? And they say, no, well, for us, 1 hour is very little time. We need at least 24 hours, because if we need to recollateralize our position, it means that we have to sign papers, that we have to call people, we have to do a lot of things. We are not going to make it on time, right? So I think that, at least in my eyes, that is like the difficult thing for them, or I would say like the challenge for them. Try to understand the times and in DeFi, right? In DeFi, it's everything is real time mostly, right? At least at a pace of 14 seconds block in Ethereum, right? But I think that they are starting to discover how they can improve their internal processes while staying in compliance with all the regulations. And they are starting to try some of the things related to DeFi. I mean, we are seeing a lot of companies right now that are giving, let's say, loans with assets. I mean, you can give them BTC or Ethereum and they will loan any coin that you want. That is like a form of vault, right? But it's not on chain. It's something that you sign a deal, you will send, you have to
centralized.
Centralized, that's correct.
You send me something, I'll give you a loan on it, right?
That's correct. Centralized, right? So you have to put trust on them. And now that we are talking about trust, one of the things that they really, really want to understand and they don't know how is that their whole life they were operating under credit score things, right? I mean, they see you being you as a person or as an institution according to your credit score, right? And in DeFi, we don't have credit score, right? We don't have that kind of things. We have collaterals. I mean, the whole credit score is collateral. If you have collateral, you have credit score, right? And they still need to understand more of it, that, right? Because although there are some projects related to credit score, I for me it's like pretty difficult to have one single entity giving credit score for the DeFi world, because it will have way too much power if that happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious. So as somebody who is plugged in with DeFi and everything, MakerDAO, all of these things, what's the most interesting segment within DeFi right now, and why for you?
Well, for me, I think that what we are going to see in terms of governance politics in DAOs, it will be really, really, really interesting. And what do I mean with this? I've been looking on some DAOs, right? And start to see how discussions are taking place, where are the conflicts inside of DAOs. And I'm seeing very interesting behaviors, right? So for example, sock puppet accounts in the forums that they say things that I would say like the original owner having some reputation can't say, right? They can have also different identities in forums, in where each identity may be 1, 2, or X amount of persons that represents like a political side of the protocol. So yeah, I'm starting to see these kind of things that all the moderators on different DAO forums are getting a bit crazy, because at the end of the day, you cannot stop, for example, sock puppet accounts, right? And they bring a lot of hits into the discussion. And they are saying things that maybe other members of the DAO that are well known inside the DAO, they can't say. So it's starting to convert in a really interesting discussion, in which we are seeing right now, like the involvements of politics, not only as financial things that we are seeing, but also in politics and discussions. And I think that is one of the most interesting things, because it's a much less explored side of things. And we need bigger DAOs, better DAOs, to start seeing more of those weird behaviors inside the forums, that I think that we will have a lot of that in the future.
Very fast moving. I mean, if anybody hasn't caught that from this conversation, it's very fast moving. I think that's part of the like intimidation factor, is like, you know, you pay attention and then you look away for a little bit and you come back and everything seems to have changed. But
yeah, and for example, have this in mind: a chat room in which you may form like a consortium of different token holders, that only those who have more than, let's say, I don't know, 45x token can enter. And you sign the transaction, checks that you have 45x token, and you are able to enter and to form this secret political faction inside the DAO. And
this
that
is where
happens,
we're going, right? And the tools are there with the Collabland and Mintgate. Like, I mean, and you can have these like tiered structure that it's like, if you have 5 tokens, you get into this one. If you have 10 tokens plus this NFT, you can get into this one. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's social. If you think about it for a moment in the social aspect of that thing, it's really, really interesting what it can have in the future out of that, right?
Okay, so that is the most interesting. What is the most overhyped spot within DeFi that you look at it and you're just like, this is not as interesting as people think that it is?
I think that is interesting, but it's really overhyped for me right now are NFTs. For me, NFTs is really, really interesting, but I think that we reach an exhaustion point right now, in which like if you go to OpenSea or Rarible, anyone is minting any crap and call it an
art
NFT.
NFTs. You should specify art NFTs. May be overdone.
That's correct.
For unique tokens and non-fungible tokens, we are vastly under where we should be.
Yes, that's correct. Art NFT. I think the art NFTs at some point, for me, at least right now, it's way, way overhyped. And I mean, I have a lot of art NFTs. And I fall on that, right? But yeah, for the state of the market right now, I think that we have an exhaustion point.
Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Mariano, this was fascinating. I think what you guys are doing at Maker and everything, I'm just massive fan of the project. So really, really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to go through these things. For my listeners that want to find out more, where can they find out more about you or Maker Growth? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, you can search us on Twitter at Maker Growth to have the latest info about the Maker protocol and what we are doing, or at my Twitter profile at Marian Di Pietra.
Awesome. And I'll link both of those, but really appreciate it, Mariano. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ben.
There you have it. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate your support. Show notes, transcript, links, and more can be found on our website at altassetallocation.com. If you'd be so kind, please share this with anyone you think might be interested or get some value from this conversation. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out. I'm always happy to hear them. Lastly, if you're on YouTube, please like the video or subscribe to the channel. If you're listening to the audio version of this, please subscribe to the podcast and or leave a review. This really helps more people find the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Thanks again, and hope you have a fantastic day. Happy investing.